Tonight we're reading from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. 10th chapter is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. Tonight is text number 11. This is the last of the 4 nutshell verses. It means everything in the Bhagavad-Gita is contained inside a nutshell. These 4 verses, compact. This is the last of those. Please repeat. Tesham evanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. Word meanings. Tesham, for them. Eva, certainly. Anukampa artam, to show special mercy. Aham, I. Ajnanajam, due to ignorance. Tamaha, darkness. Nashayami, dispel. Atma bhava, within their hearts. Staha, situated. Jnana, of knowledge. Deepena, with the lamp. Bhasvata, glowing. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So before I begin the purport, I'll set the context a bit. Now in these 4 verses, chapter 10, verses 8, 9, 10, and 11, Krishna encapsulates the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. So just an overview of what he says. First, we've been reading about his opulences. In fact, this chapter is called The Opulence of the Absolute, and there'll be much more of Krishna's opulences. So Krishna summarizes his opulences. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. So that pretty much covers everything. So as Prabhupada would say, if you know Krishna, then naturally there'll be some attraction to him. So Krishna says, I'm full of opulences, I have unlimited opulences, and one who understands this becomes my devotee. That's the basic idea of the first verse. Then in the second verse he explains, well, what does a devotee do? The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, their lives are fully devoted to me, they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So basically they serve Krishna by Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting about Krishna. And they get great satisfaction for that. So first one gets knowledge of Krishna, that you get attraction from that. You surrender to Krishna, then you get some bhava, buddha bhava samanvita, Krishna said in the first verse. You get some feeling toward Krishna. Then you glorify him and hear about him. Then in the next verse he says, those persons, they do that all the time because of that bhava. And then Krishna says, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So I give knowledge to them. And this verse elaborates on that. He gives knowledge, and we'll hear in the purport what Krishna means here by the knowledge that he's giving, what exactly he's doing. So Srila Prabhupada's purport. When Lord Chaitanya was in Benares promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. Prakash Ananda Saraswati, a very influential and learned scholar in Benares at that time, derided Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. Sometimes Mayavadi philosophers criticize the devotees because they think that most of the devotees are in the darkness of ignorance and are philosophically naive sentimentalists. Actually, that is not the fact. There are very, very learned scholars who have put forward the philosophy of devotion. But even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. So the sincere devotee fully engaged in Krishna consciousness cannot be without knowledge. The only qualification is that one carry out devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. So before I go on, there are a couple of points that I wanted to speak about in this first paragraph. First, the idea that devotees are not sentimentalists, as people think. That idea is still there, of course, today, because not only in India, where people might know something about bhakti or jnana as opposed to jnana, or even karma yoga, they may think, well, these people, they don't know anything, they just sing, that's all, they're just sentimental. But even in the West, of course, when devotees chant on the street, people, they don't really tend to see us as intellectuals when we're on a street corner and our devotees chanting Hare Krishna, devotees in saris. They may think we're foolish, actually, or crazy. So they may have this idea these people don't know anything. Where I'm from Alachua, Florida, so there's a University of Florida there. We chant near the campus, University of Florida. So many intellectuals there, so-called intellectuals. So they walk by with their noses in the air, and they don't want to have anything to do with these silly people chanting on the street corner. So that may be an impression that people get. This is just something for sentimentalists. There's nothing behind it. But Prabhupada makes the point, this is a wrong idea. It's absolutely false. It's certainly not true. One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is the caliber of people who joined Lord Chaitanya's movement. Really big people. We know, of course, we often think of the Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. They were, like the Secretary of State of the Prime Minister of Bengal. That was their position. There was a governor there, but he was always out fighting wars, and he was leaving them in charge to run the state. They were very, very high persons. Prabhupada there's one place, Ashesha Mandalapati. Ashesha, the Mandalapati means they were the leaders of the high society. Not only were they high society, they were the leaders of the high society. Just like today, I don't know if they have this term in Bollywood, but in Hollywood they have A-list actors and B-list actors. So to get invited to the biggest parties, where the big, the top grossing actors go to, and you have to be an A-list actor. If you're a B-lister, that's pretty good, but not good enough. So the Goswamis were definitely A-list among the high society. They were at the top rung. So what did they do? They gave up everything to follow this sentimentalist. Lord Chaitanya, of course, he came with his Sankirtan party to Ramakeli. It's a funny incident, actually, because this was Nawab Hussain Shah, who was basically a bloodthirsty, Mlecha, Yavana, and he heard about Lord Chaitanya, and there were 1,000 wherever Lord Chaitanya went. People were so attracted to him that he drew huge crowds. So Lord Chaitanya asked one devotee, actually, I forget what his name was. He asked him, who is this Hindu saint? All these people are attracting him. And this devotee said, oh, don't worry about him. It's just, this is some temporary infatuation. It's no big thing. Don't worry about it. But then some Muslims said, no, actually, he is really powerful. I think he's Ishvara himself. And then the king said, whoever this other devotee was, I can't remember. He said, I think you're telling me the straight thing. I think he's Ishvara, actually. This Nawab Hussain Shah said, I think he's God. He's so powerful, he's attracting so many people. So he was, of course, this is an example of someone in high position. So the Goswamis that were so educated. Another nice example is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was really the intellectual's intellectual. He was at the top rung. You know, there's one story where he wanted to study Nyaya, and he went someplace, I guess it was in Benares, and they wouldn't let, I mean, I heard this story in two different ways. Some devotees said they wouldn't let him take any books out of the library, so he memorized the whole library. But I also heard he just memorized the whole book. So one way or the other, he just, whatever he wanted, he just memorized it, and he brought it with him. And he wrote a book on Navanyaya. It's called The New Logic, a New Philosophy. So he was, the center of learning at that time was Navadvip. People were going, that's one reason why this Keshava Kashmiri went there, because he was a Digvijay Pandit defeating everybody, but he couldn't, if he really wanted to have, you know, the high class badge, then he had to defeat the Pandits in Navadvip. But among all the Pandits in Navadvip, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was at the top. So what did, of course, you know, when Lord Chaitanya went to Jagannath Puri and he was in ecstasy and he was taken to Sarvabhauma's house. So Sarvabhauma, at first he took kind of a superior position. He wanted to instruct Lord Chaitanya. But it wasn't long until he realized this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, seeing Shadbhuja helped a little bit. He saw the Lord's six-armed form. So he was converted. This person who was, you know, it's like the President of the United States all of a sudden shaving up one day, and the Prime Minister, of course, maybe it wouldn't be such a big thing in India, but in America it would be. But even in India at that time. And of course, another nice example is King Prataparudra. He was a king. He was ruled over a big area of Orissa. And so he was a king, he was a soldier, he was a fighter, he was a powerful king. And he accepted. And we know how intense was his desire to get the association of Lord Chaitanya. So these weren't just ordinary hippies in Lord Chaitanya's time. They were very, very qualified people. All over Navadvip, so many scholars, qualified persons, all of them. You read about, actually the more you read about Lord Chaitanya's Leela, I've discovered, because I've been reading a lot lately from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, other books about Lord Chaitanya and his followers, you start getting more and more of a sense about Lord Chaitanya's associates. You start remembering, oh, Mukunda, oh, that's right, that's who Mukunda is. Oh, he's the one who did this, and so on. So then you think, oh, wow, this person was really qualified. So they were all like that. They were highly, highly qualified, highly intelligent persons. So, as Prabhupada says, they weren't just sentimentalists. And they wrote so many highly intellectual books, like the Goswamis. Who can compete with Jiva Goswami? You try reading the Shat Sandarbhas and see what a challenge it is. Very, very, very difficult books. Because they knew everything. You know, Jiva Goswami, he met Lord Chaitanya in Navadvip, and you know, the Navadvip Parikrama, Jiva Goswami showed him around Navadvip. Then he wanted him to write about Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, but first he wanted him to learn everything there was to learn about everything else, all the other philosophies. So he went to Benares himself, and he studied all the Shad Darshans and so on, all these other philosophies. So if you read, for example, like the Bhagavad Sandarbha, where he establishes Bhagavan as the supreme absolute truth, as the principle, as the what Brahman is, this being described in the Vedas. So he's arguing all these details about Mayavad philosophy. So many things that you think, well, how can he know this so well? All their arguments, he knew them inside and out because he had studied them. Of course, he was a genius, but he knew everything on the other side. He knew the other's arguments inside and out, so he could argue about it so thoroughly. So it wasn't like that he did. It wasn't that he didn't know, and that's why I'll just chant Hare Krishna because I'm too stupid to do anything else. Obviously, it wasn't like that. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, he was Nimai Pandit, so he was accused of being a sentimentalist, and he characterized himself that way too. He said, "My spiritual master called me a fool." He said, "You're not qualified to study Vedanta, just chant Hare Krishna." So Lord Chaitanya put it that way. And of course, what did Lord Chaitanya say? Then I started chanting Hare Krishna, and I didn't know what happened. All of a sudden, I just became mad. Couldn't stop doing it. But then they said, well, if you want to talk Vedanta philosophy, maybe we can do a little of that. So we did that with Prakashananda Saraswati. Converted him and all of his followers to Vaishnavism. So obviously, there's no lack of philosophy in Krishna consciousness and Krishna Tattva. That's certainly there. So that's the point Prabhupada makes here. Now then Prabhupada makes this very interesting sentence. Actually, he kind of says the same thing in a previous verse too, if you were here for that class. He says, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. So the idea, then he reiterates here, let's see. Even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literature, these philosophers in our line, or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. So you may think, what? Even if he doesn't take advantage of his spiritual master, what can that possibly mean? So look, we often have to look at things in the context and see what the point is being made. The point isn't being made that you can just reject your spiritual master and Krishna will go and help you become Krishna conscious. The point is that even if somehow or other, maybe you're deaf, dumb, and blind or whatever, somehow or other, you can't take advantage of your spiritual master's teachings. Maybe you just don't get it. But you have a really, really sincere heart. That's what Krishna wants to see. That's what he's going to reciprocate with. So it's not saying that you can just reject your spiritual master, and because obviously that doesn't, the two don't fit together. You can't be a sincere devotee and reject your spiritual master. Sincerity means obviously you have sincerity towards your spiritual master. So the idea here is to show that even if someone is really doesn't have much mental capacity, you might say, for intellectual enterprise. We have great intellectuals who have written great intellectual books, but if they're over your head, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Chant Hare Krishna. Actually, in the early days, when Prabhupada was preparing devotees for these different degrees, Bhakti Shastri degree and so on, especially the first from the Bhakti Shastri degree, and one devotee wrote to me, said, I'm just not much of a scholarly devotee. I'm really kind of nervous about this Bhakti Shastri exam. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, you're a sincere devotee and you'll be able to pass it. Krishna will help you from within the heart. Of course, if you've ever seen the first Bhakti Shastri test, it was 10 questions. The first one was, is Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or something like that. It was a really, really basic, really basic questions. Okay, so let me go on to the next paragraph. The Mayavadi philosophers think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. So this sentence also struck me. They think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. But what does Prabhupada mean, without discriminating? This word, of course, the word discrimination has a bad connotation today. It usually means racial bias, racial discrimination. So discrimination means to have a discriminating intellect, to be able to look at things clearly and see what's good, what's bad, what's higher, what's lower. So what does it mean? The Mayavadi philosophers think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. So the Mayavadi philosophers, what they do, of course, this is what Prakashananda was criticizing, and his followers were criticizing Lord Chaitanya for not studying Vedanta. So what do they do when they study Vedanta? They discriminate. They look at it very, very minutely. It's just like scholars today. They debate really, really minutia, means very tiny things. To get a PhD, you have to come up with something that nobody else has, and there's already thousands of PhDs in your field, so you have to just really microscopically look into something. So that means discrimination. You have to weed out everything else. This can also be summarized as the process of neti-neti. That we could also call discrimination. Not this, not this. This is not sat. This is asat. We want to find sat. So what is asat? So the path of jnana involves that kind of thing where it's all intellectual. It's all going on in your mind. Of course, Prabhupada criticized the very basis of this idea that you can figure out the absolute truth with your mind, because he would say, even the Mayavadis, they admit, of course they don't call themselves Mayavadis, we do, it's a pejorative term, basically, but they do say, basically, that everything is Maya. Jagan Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya. So everything is false or Maya in this material world. They are in this material world, and they're trying to get out of it. So when they're with their minds that are part of this material world, how can they think that they're going to be able to get out of it? Transcend it with their minds. It doesn't make any sense. So they're missing that discrimination in their own thought process. So I'll continue here. For them, that means the Mayavadis, this answer is given by the Supreme Lord. Those who are engaged in pure devotional service, even though they be without sufficient education, and even without sufficient knowledge of the Vedic principles, are still helped by the Supreme God, as stated in this verse. So again, this is the point. You don't have to be a big intellectual. Krishna is within your heart. As he says in the 15th chapter, I give knowledge and forgetfulness, but especially he gives knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So he can give the knowledge from within. Paramatma. So continuing, next paragraph. Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that basically there is no possibility of understanding the supreme truth, the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead, simply by speculating. For the supreme truth is so great that it is not possible to understand him or to achieve him simply by making a mental effort. Man can go on speculating for several millions of years. And if he is not devoted, if he is not a lover of the supreme truth, he will never understand Krishna or the supreme truth. This is nice the way Prabhupada has phrased this. A lover of the supreme truth. Because some people may claim to be searching for the truth, so they're lovers of the truth. In the sense that they want to know, they may claim at least. A scientist may say, I'm a lover of the truth. I just want to know what the truth is. But the supreme truth is Krishna, and he's revealing himself. And if you don't love him as a person, you're not going to understand what that supreme truth is, or who that supreme truth is. This point is made throughout the Vedic literature. In fact, the impersonalists, they take it to the extreme. They have this term, anirvachaniya, which means that the absolute truth is indescribable by words. But as Prabhupada would say, they have so many words to describe, to talk about what is indescribable by words. They can talk and talk for hours, as he would say, jiro, or jiro, as Prabhupada would pronounce. They can talk forever on jiro, and they say that he is indescribable by words. But why do they have so many words? So it's not that he's indescribable. In fact, this is what sets the scene for in the 10th canto is 87th chapter, Prayers by the Personified Vedas. That question is raised there. How can the words of the Vedas, which are ordinary sound, we can hear that sound, how can it reveal Brahman, the absolute truth, which is transcendental? So, of course, the basic answer is that it's not ordinary sound. Brahma, it's called Shabda Brahma. Brahma means spirit. It's spiritual sound. And Krishna has empowered that sound, because sometimes this idea of, I remember hearing this when I first came to Krishna consciousness, about how our senses are all defective. But at the same time, people would often ask, well, if our senses are so defective, but we're always told that we're supposed to hear. To understand Krishna consciousness, you have to hear. But if my hearing is defective, how am I supposed to learn the truth? That's the idea. So it's actually answered in this Prayers by the Personified Vedas, that Krishna empowers that sound to break through that imperfection. Basically, that's the idea. That transcendental sound of the Vedas, it doesn't matter. Of course, the other thing is our ears are imperfect in a certain way, in a certain realm. They're actually perfect for hearing the sound of the Vedas because it's really the heart. The sound is traveling through the ears, but it's the heart that is hearing the sound. That's where it's penetrating and giving us the power to understand Krishna. So again, this idea that you can't get to the absolute truth by speculating. What's that verse from the Akata Upanishad? Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo na medayam na bahuna shrutena tasyaisha atma vivrute tunum swam. That's the last line. It says that you can't by Nayam atma pravachanena labhya. You can't attain Atma. Here Atma means the absolute truth. Atma often means God, Paramatma in the Vedic literature, the absolute truth. Labhya. You can't attain the absolute truth just because you're a great orator. That's the first one that's given. Or if you have a big brain, medaya, nabhushrutena, or just because you've read so many scriptures. And we often come across people who know so much. I know in my early days of Krishna consciousness, sometimes in distributing books, you'd come across some professor who knew something about the Vedas, and they would start talking about this Brahmana, the Shatapata Brahmana, or this, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, or this or that, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But of course, he didn't know what he was talking about either, because he didn't know what the Siddhanta was. So people can know so many. There are even our own philosophy of Chaitanya Vaishnavism, for example. There are scholars that know more about Gaudiya Vaishnava than any of us do. I can guarantee you that. They, just like I was saying, they study things minutely. So they know so many of Lord Chaitanya's associates. They've thoroughly studied all the biographies of Lord Chaitanya. They know everything on a certain level, but they don't know anything because they don't accept it. Of course, our acharyas who write those books, they have some choice words for some of them. Like Krishnadas Kaviraj calls them dogs and hogs and other nice names like that. The academics who think that this is all just fantasy. But no, it's not fantasy. We have eyewitness accounts of so many persons who wrote about what Lord Chaitanya did. It's really quite astounding when you think about it. When you read, somehow to me, I've been reading recently Chaitanya Bhagavat, and what Lord Chaitanya did in Navadvip it's just so amazing. And so many people saw it. And they wrote it down, like Murari Gupta, he recorded it. He was there, he witnessed these things. So many thousands and thousands of people being converted to Krishna consciousness and dancing in ecstasy, and the potency of Lord Chaitanya's followers to turn anybody into a devotee who would just exhibit ecstatic symptoms on the spot, and all these amazing things. So, and again, the authority of persons who accepted Lord Chaitanya as God is quite amazing. So that's the power of the Lord Chaitanya's association, the association of Lord Chaitanya's devotees, and the association of the Guru. That sound that comes through them empowers us, and that's how you get knowledge. So this, of course, that's what the verse is about today, especially. Let me go on here because probably make some more points here towards the end of the paragraph. So this is the point about you can speculate for millions of years. You think, imagine, millions of years. That's a lot of speculation. Of course, the Brahma Samhita says this, Pantastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo. You can speculate at the speed of the mind for millions of years, where it says you won't even get to see a little ray of Krishna's toenail, the effulgence from Krishna's toenail, even if you speculate for millions and millions of years at the speed of the mind. So, in other words, the point is, don't think you're ever going to get to Krishna by your speculation. You have to love him, then he just reveals himself. It's so simple. This is the other thing. People think, well, no, it just can't be. But there's nothing wrong with the logic of that, obviously. It makes perfect sense. If God is a person, which you can grant as a starting point, why not? If God is a person, then why can't you know him? Why can't he empower you to know him? Of course he can do that. And what would inspire him to reveal himself to you? Your love, your affection, your devotion. Obviously, you reveal your innermost secrets to your friends, the persons that you're close to. Persons have good feelings toward you, not your enemy. You don't reveal your heart to your enemy so they can cut it open. So this makes perfect sense. This is you can say this is a high philosophical point. That if you just want to know God, just love Him. If you want to know God, just love Him. Just please Him. Then He'll reveal Himself to you. And of course our scriptures are full of Him doing that over and over again. In the Bhagavatam, so many places. He reveals Himself to His devotees, enlightens them. So that's what He's talking about here, of course. My devotees, I take care of everything. This is the next point that we'll go to here. It says, only by devotional service is the supreme truth Krishna pleased. And by His inconceivable energy, He can reveal Himself to the heart of the pure devotee. Because someone may also think, well, God is so big and we're so small, so how's He going to fit? Because He has a Chintya Shakti. That's why He can do the impossible. That's one of the definitions of God. The pure devotee always has Krishna within his heart. And with the presence of Krishna, who is just like the sun, the darkness of ignorance is at once dissipated. This is the special mercy rendered to the pure devotee of Krishna. And the last paragraph. Due to the contamination of material association, through many, many millions of births, one's heart is always covered with the dust of materialism. But when one engages in devotional service and constantly chants Hare Krishna, the dust quickly clears and one is elevated to the platform of pure knowledge. Actually, one point I wanted to make was sometimes we hear this term that if you know Krishna, you'll know everything. So we have to be careful what we mean by the word everything. That we have to be careful about taking things too literally. I know sometimes devotees come up with absurd ideas just because of words like that. Well, everything doesn't mean the other day I was out and I was thinking, everything's made of bricks in India. So I was thinking, I wonder how many bricks there are in India. So I thought, knowing everything doesn't mean you know how many bricks there are in India. That's not what knowing everything means. It means you know who Krishna is. You know what? That truth. You know Krishna Tattva. That's what knowing everything means. You know what reality is. That's what knowing everything means. It doesn't mean every little minute detail of the material world. There's no reason to know everything. In that sense. So here Prabhupada's talking about, so when you become purified, you become full of knowledge. So that's the knowledge Prabhupada is talking about. He says here, what is elevated to the platform of pure knowledge. The ultimate goal, Vishnu, can be attained only by this chant and by devotional service and not by mental speculation or argument. So now the next point, Prabhupada is getting this. I looked at the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushana, and both of them, this is referring to, I know many of you are familiar with the verse in the 9th chapter where Krishna says, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. So the idea is Krishna takes care of everything for the devotee. So Prabhupada is linking this to this verse. When your heart is full of knowledge, you're self-realized, then Krishna takes care of everything for you. That's the final point that's being made here. The pure devotee does not have to worry about the material necessities of life. He does not need to be anxious because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita. By studying Bhagavad-Gita, one can become a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of material endeavors. This, of course, is the definition of faith also given by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Shraddha Shabde Vishvas Kohe Sudrida Nishchay Krishna Bhakti Kali Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. One has to have the faith that by engaging in bhakti, everything is taken care of. I don't have to think, oh, if I chant Hare Krishna, but I don't worship the demigods, for example, then I'm going to miss out on something. Or certain obligations, if I become a pure devotee, I'll have to pay for those in my next life, or so on. No. Krishna Bhakti Kaili Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Sarva Karma Krita. Everything else that you're supposed to do is taken care of just by developing your bhakti, awakening your bhakti. All right, so we'll stop there. Let me just read the verse and translation again. Tesham evanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhaspata. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Any questions or additions? Yes, we need to use the microphone. Can someone pass the microphone here? Yeah.
And Prabhupada told Manavisha Prabhu, we should know our enemy's philosophy better than we know our own.
Uh-huh.
So I was just kind of wondering how Prabhupada has given us so much to do. He wants us to understand his books like the lawyers know the law books, and also to understand our enemy's philosophy, or the other people's philosophies better than our own. So how does one have enough time to even do this?
Well, fortunately, it's all there in our books. You don't have to read their books because the arguments are put there. That's, of course, that's the standard way of argumentation in Vedic culture. You present the opposition, then you make your argument. So you make their case for them, and then you say what's wrong with it. You know, of course, Lord Chaitanya always did that with his classmates. He would go back and forth, and at the after a while, they couldn't figure out which one was right. He was so expert at it. But of course, Prabhupada did that. He explained what the faults were of Mayavad philosophy, and then he argued against it. And Jiva Goswami, as I was saying about Mayavad philosophy, he describes very clearly what all different arguments from the Mayavadis. And then he says what's wrong with them. So we can get that by reading Prabhupada's books and also reading the books of our acharyas. We can hear both sides without delving into theirs. That's a waste. Hurts your brain too. There's no nectar in it. Something else? Yes, Prabhu. It's on, I can hear. Yeah. I think it's not very loud, but it's on.
Lord says, whatever you like, He preserves, and whatever you want, He gives us. So, just like when we want to become a pure devotee, how we can become a pure devotee?
Actually, one thing I want to say about that verse, at least in the commentaries of Vishwanath and Baladev, they apply this principle to pure devotees. I carry what they lack and preserve. In other words, the pure devotee doesn't have to worry about anything. Everything. You know the story of Srivas Pandit, where Lord Chaitanya said to him, he said, well, Srivas, I don't understand. You don't have a job. You have all these dependents, this big household, and what's going to happen to you? You have to get a job or something. And Srivas Pandit clapped his hands. And Lord Chaitanya said, what kind of an answer is that? I ask you, what are you thinking? And he says, I'm thinking if 3 days I go without food, then what did he say? I'll kill myself or I'll get a job, something, I forget what it was. And Lord Chaitanya says, and I make this vow that you will not, be a go hungry for 1 day or 1 minute or something like that. Because, of course, he said, Lakshmi Devi herself will come and take care of you, so you don't have to worry about that. So the point is, for such a big devotee, Lord Chaitanya was basically saying that a pure devotee on that level, Krishna sends. He takes everything. Now, of course, we also want to take some solace from this verse, so we don't. We also think, well, I'm really doing my best, and Krishna has to help, obviously. And Prabhupada also would sometimes use this, present this idea. I don't know, but there were different anecdotes where Prabhupada would said something like, well, if you just go, if you become 75% perfect or something. Because Prabhupada would think, well, Prabhupada, to be completely pure, it's like, it just seems like it's just such an unattainable goal. How are we ever going to get there? So I know there are a couple of stories like that. I can't remember the exact details, but Prabhupada lowered the number, to become 80%. And then it's like, no, well, how about 75%? How about 50%? All right. So anyway, the point was Krishna helps. Krishna will help. So with that, of course, is part of our Sharanagati, means Krishna gives protection. So we're hoping we're praying, we can expect it. There's one place I remember when I was a new devotee distributing books, and it's always a challenge. And I remember devotees used to saying, well, you just have to expect Krishna's mercy. Prabhupada says you're supposed to expect Krishna's mercy. We're dependent on Krishna. Krishna, if I don't get your mercy, then I can't do it. So that's obviously part of the consciousness of the devotee also. And you pray for that. Krishna help me. I mean, that's what we're praying, really. Krishna help me. Hare Krishna. Krishna help me. Some devotee, I don't know if, some devotee, he's not a devotee, sorry, he was a scholar, but somewhat of a devotee. There was a paper I read. He spent, I think, a year, in Mayapur, just studying, maybe from a social standpoint, ISKCON Mayapur and the devotees. And one thing that really amazed him when he spoke with devotees, interviewed devotees, where so many of them said, I'm not a good devotee. I'm just trying. I've been doing this for a long time, but it's a struggle to be Krishna conscious. And every day I'm still trying to hear my rounds, and I've been doing it for 40 years. And he was just, it was like he was impressed by the humility, but it was a kind of a surprise to him that no one said, wow, yeah, I've made it. I've mastered this. I got it down. I got this bhakti taken care of. No, devotees always feel, no, there's more. I'm so fallen and lowly, and I need Krishna's help, which is good, actually. Krishna wants to see that. Devotee never feels self-satisfied in that sense. In fact, the highest devotees, they think they're offenders to Krishna. They think, I can't do anything to please Krishna. I'm so low. All these others are serving Krishna so well. What am I doing? I can't do anything. Of course, that can be a psychological hang-up for us in our conditioned state. For advanced devotee, it's a real bhava. It's a real part of their bhava. In many ways, of course, there are many contradictory feelings that go on within the devotee. So that one has its place also. So we can feel, we feel satisfaction and we feel dissatisfaction at the same time. We feel happy in Krishna consciousness, but also a little bit unhappy that, well, I need to do more, I need to do better. I'm not really serving my spiritual master, and so on. So these things are all there in the mood of the devotee. And we pick that up. That's one reason, of course, well, we have many reasons for it, but we study the acharyas and the songs of the acharyas because they show us what is the real feeling, the genuine feeling of the devotee of the Lord. All right, so I guess there's no more. We'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.